The answer is now. The other one that comes into play is substitution. And this one is where we're using a comparable property to help us price our subject property. And that comparable and the subject are never identical. There are no two properties that are exactly identical. It might be the same floor plan, same builder, but the lot might be slightly different. With that being said, though, we use that concept of substitution of the comparable property had a brand new roof, but the subject property has new mechanicals. Maybe we can substitute those two maintenance items being replaced and find that the subject property has a similar value to the comparable property that's sold. The substitution concept is a major player in the sales comparison approach that we really need to tackle next. When an appraiser does their research, there's really three different techniques they can use. They can use the sales comparison approach, which works really, really well in residential, commercial, light commercial, land, and some rentals, some lease situations, right? They're going to go out and research and say, other 2 bedrooms are selling or renting for this. Other 3-bedroom homes in this neighborhood are selling for this. And they're going to compare the subject to the comparables. Now, here's the key thing. When they make price adjustments, it's always to the comparable properties, not the subject. So a really good example that we used was if a 3-bedroom home sells for $180, what's the most likely sales price for a 2-bedroom with fireplace? And let's say in this example, they tell you that a 3rd bedroom is worth $5,000 and a fireplace is worth $2,000. We need to take that 3-bedroom at $180 and make it look like a 2-bedroom. That puts us at $175. Now we need to add back in that fireplace, which is $2,000. So our most likely value for that is going to be $177,000. Now I know that seems counterintuitive, but remember, we're taking the comparable properties and we're adjusting them to look like the subject. So if the comparable has a new roof and your subject doesn't, we need to decrease the value of the comparable to make it look like it doesn't have a new roof like the subject. Does that make sense? I like it. The second type of valuation that you might have is the cost approach. And this is going to be for very unique real estate where we're basically taking the property down to bare land, we're building it new, and then we're depreciating or decreasing the price based on the 3 factors of physical deterioration, functional obsolescence, or external obsolescence. Physical deterioration, and this is where I think your questions come into play, is knowing the difference between these 3 factors. Physical deterioration, I would write down the word curable. It's easily curable, it's easily repairable at a fairly low cost. It's going to be replacing flooring, it's going to be painting, it's going to be maintenance. It's curable. What is functional obsolescence in a property is incurable. It's really hard to cure, or it would be so much money to do it. So something that might be incurable, that could even be plumbing that's behind walls that you can't get to now. It could be an inconvenient floor plan. We talked about a 3-bedroom home versus a 3-bedroom home where you've got to walk through 1 bedroom to get to the 3rd bedroom. Those function differently. And the desirability when you got to walk through a bedroom to get through a bedroom is going to be less than a traditional 3-bedroom that you've got a hallway that goes to each of them. That's the example that we gave. I one time Googled functional obsolescence in real estate, and the example that it gave me was a sunken living room. Remember back in the 60s and 70s, the Brady Bunch house, you came in and you went down steps to their living and dining room area. That was a sunken style living room. I thought it was fancy. But I guess that's an outdated design architecture feature. The third one is external or economic obsolescence. And again, I'm going to use the word incurable here as well. This is something, though, that's different than functional obsolescence because it's not on the property, it's off the property, but it might influence your value. It's going to be the retina burning orange house across the street with 87 junk cars, 14 cats, and 83 dogs, right? That's maybe going to affect your value across the street. And then last but not least is the income approach. And we'll discuss the math around this during our calculations section, probably be on Monday for you guys. But I do want you to know what it means. It means that we're going to use future rent minus operating costs to create a net operating income. And we're going to use that net operating income in combination with a capitalization rate, which is a rate of return. And we're going to combine those two numbers to create a value. So this works really good for large commercial rentals or large apartment buildings is a great example, but we're using future rent to establish a price now. And then reconciliation, here's how I want to describe it for you. And I know I've said an appraiser would probably give you a much better answer, but here's where I want your brain to start. Reconciliation for an appraiser, I'm going to describe that to you, is their opportunity to determine and defend their report. It means they're going to take all their findings and they're going to determine and defend the method that they used, whether it's sales comparison. They're going to decide which of those comparables maybe is most similar and has the best influence on determining a value. They're going to use market conditions. They're going to use maybe the fact that that property had multiple offers on it and sold over list price. They're going to take everything and they're going to determine and defend and give a final number that is their opinion of value. Okay. Now, of these 6 test questions, because I know someone loves to ask this question and I love to answer it. Give me the speed round of what they're going to ask of those 6 test questions. I think you absolutely need to know the definition of an appraisal. I think you absolutely need to know who can do a broker price opinion. I absolutely think that you need to know the acronym for value is DUST. I think that you should absolutely review principles of value. And again, my highlights are going to be anticipation, substitution, possibly supply and demand. I think you absolutely should know how the sales comparison approach uses substitution and we make the adjustment in value to the comparable, not the subject. And then I would absolutely know the difference about those depreciation factors of physical deterioration, functional obsolescence, and exterior obsolescence. Now, is that a guarantee of those 6? No, no. But I do think that those are my 6 highlights to get us there. Those are my most likely suspects that I would want you to know about. Now, with that, let's also do a quick review of real estate financing. And this has got 8 test questions with it. Now, here's the deal. I have been repeating over and over that when it comes to studying for the real estate exam in Iowa with PSI, contracts is number 1. We're going to get to that this afternoon. Number 2 is going to be agency. Number 3 is going to be practice of real estate. Agency and practice of real estate, those are 10 test questions each. Then your 4th and 5th category, coming in at 8 test questions on the exam, is property ownership and financing. You pick which one you want to dive into. So financing with 8 test questions, this is a top 5 study material. And you've got a lot of opportunity. With real estate financing, I do want you to know the definition of the term mortgage. A mortgage is a specific type of loan to buy real estate. And a mortgage, we also use that language that it's a type of lien, right? It's something that we put on public record that lets everybody know that you owe money and you've got to repay that. And they're putting a lien on it to secure your responsibility to pay that back. Now, most mortgages are made up of 4 elements. PITI, principal, interest, tax, and insurance. Principal is the balance of your loan that you're paying down. Interest is the charge that you pay to the bank. That's how they make money. Taxes are your property taxes. And then insurance would be like your homeowner's insurance, or they might call it hazard insurance. Now, there's 3 big rocks that a buyer is going to need to attain in order to get approved for a mortgage: credit score, debt to income ratio, and loan to value. Loan to value is the proportion that they're borrowing from the bank versus their down payment. Both of those put together equals 100% of the price. Debt to income ratio is the relationship between their gross monthly income and how much debt they carry. I will go through the math of both of those when we dive into calculations, probably on Monday. Mortgage terminology. I would absolutely know acceleration clause. I would absolutely know alienation clause. Acceleration clause is going to be a term of the mortgage agreement that says that if for any reason I start missing payments, the bank reserves the right to move the due date up to now. They're not just going to let you wait it out for the next 20 years and try to figure it out and get back on track. No, you start defaulting, they reserve the right to say, no, it's due now. Alienation clause states that if you've got a mortgage and you will it, sell it, or gift it to another person or another party, you've got to pay off the mortgage balance. It's not a line of credit. like your MasterCard that follows you wherever you go. A mortgage is a specific lien, it's an encumbrance. And the mortgage clause is going to say that you've got to pay it off to a zero balance anytime you transfer it. So let's say I want to sell my house and I've got a mortgage and I want to buy a new one. I can't sell this current property, take the cash and go buy a new one and keep paying on this mortgage. No, it's not like a MasterCard. It's a specific lien on this specific property, which means when I sell this, I'd have to pay off the mortgage and then apply for a new mortgage to buy the next property. Another big thing I think you need to know is discount points. I think you're going to have math around this. This to me is the most popular math question right now on the exam, but by definition, let's do that here. A discount point, by definition, is 1% of the amount borrowed. Of the amount borrowed. Not the purchase price, the amount borrowed. And then another reminder here is when a lender makes their calculations on loan to value to help you establish the amount that they're borrowing, remember the lender uses the purchase price in the sales contract or the appraisal, whichever is less. So if the purchase price is 200, but it appraises for 195, 195 is now the number that the lender is going to use for loan to value. So it's 1% of the amount borrowed. Then I would know your way around a foreclosure. And this is what I call, pay, stay, right? You miss mortgage payments, the bank is going to start foreclosure process. And once it's foreclosed, they now own it. Another term for you for foreclosed properties is an REO, real estate owned. You hear the term REO, that's a bank owned property that they've taken into inventory because of a foreclosure. The other thing I had you add in your notes is a redemption clause. This is related in the foreclosure world. And a redemption clause, I want you to think of it as a way for the borrower to redeem themselves, right? It is what it is in the word. It is a way for them to get back on track, and the lender gives that borrower an opportunity to redeem themselves, pay up the balance, and get back on track. Anything around the lender allowing that borrower to redeem themselves. That's going to be a redemption clause. Then I don't know that this will come up a lot, but it's also good for your career, is a loan origination fee. I would know that that is a fee that the bank charges just to create a brand new loan. It's not for refinancing. There's other charges to refinance a loan, but it's just to originate the loan. And then I would know a short sale, what the definition of a short sale is. And that does not mean short on time. It means that the borrower is short on funds to pay off the balance to the lender. So maybe they bought it for $150,000 and the kids flooded the bathroom taking a bath one night and it ruins the flooring and it goes out in the hallway and they don't repair it and it starts to rot. And then they get termites. It starts to dilapidate, is the word I'll use for fun. I don't know. Seemed like a fun word for that use. And now that property is not worth as much money. It's now maybe only worth $100,000. And so in order to sell it, they're going to ask the bank to sell it short of what they owe as a mortgage balance. So I would know the definition, and then I would also know that money that they sold it short, do they get 1099? Does that look like income? And the answer is no. There was a Mortgage Relief Act, I don't know, somewhere in 2008 that I think President Obama did. It said they do not get taxed on that amount forgiven. And then that seems to have been a law that's been extended. For loan types, you've got a lot of options here. Number one thing is I would know that a fully amortized loan means that the principal and interest payment is the exact same every month for the entire length of the loan. Three really good types of fully amortized loans I think you should know about is conventional, FHA insured, and VA. Conventional loans, I want you to know that for those, anytime they put less than 20% down, they've got to pay private mortgage insurance. More specifically, I want you to know how PMI functions. The borrower pays for it, but it benefits the bank in case they default on the loan and stop making their payments. It's not like Aflac that covers you when you lose your job, pay your bills. That's not what PMI is. The borrower pays for it, but it benefits the bank in case they default on the loan. It insures that top 20%. I would know an FHA insured loan. This means they're getting insurance instead of from a private company like PMI. The government provides the mortgage insurance. And this is 3.5% down. And I would know who's a great candidate for an FHA loan. And the phrasing that I would recommend you know is that it's a low to moderate income family, which a family could be one person, by the way. Then for a VA loan, this is for veterans. And I would want you to know that certificate of reasonable value, CRV, that's what I would equivalent their version of an appraisal. Then under adjustable rate mortgages, I've got the term negative amortization. That's the term I think you really need to know. Another way that they might say it is reverse amortization. And that happens anytime that the balance of your mortgage goes up instead of down, either with a reverse mortgage or because the bank is adding fees to the balance. So instead of the balance of the principal going down, it's going up. That's reverse or negative amortization. Then I would know a balloon loan is a partially amortized loan, which means, for example, if we've got a 5-year balloon, that's 60 payments. 5 times 12, 60 payments. The first 59 are going to be relatively low. But that last 60th payment, it's going to balloon up and you're going to owe the full balance. Then I want to skip forward to the financing system. And I think that we need to know how the primary and secondary mortgage market works. The primary mortgage market is the one that creates the original loan. They charge a loan origination fee. Then what they do is they assign it or sell it to another bank in the secondary mortgage market. I want you to know the major player in that secondary mortgage market is Fannie Mae. Fannie Mae all day. Then, when it comes to financing laws, these are all laws to protect the consumer when it comes to getting a mortgage. And the big one I want you to know there is Regulation Z. And when you think of Regulation Z, I want you to think about how a bank advertises. I want you to think how they advertise. And there are certain triggering terms that they must use. They can't just say, buy a house for $500 a month. They can't just do that. If they do buy a house for $500 a month, they've got to disclose the triggering terms that make it qualified at $500 a month. What's the loan to value? What's the interest rate? What's the maybe any annual interest rates? What's the length of the loan? How many payments do you make? They've got to disclose how you qualify to have it be 500. The other thing I want you to know is RESPA. And when you think of RESPA, I want you to think no kickbacks, meaning the lender cannot give you a referral fee for bringing them a buyer. Then the last big rock is what we call TRID, TILA RESPA integration. And what TRID does is it states that when a borrower gets a loan, the costs that they are quoted at the time of loan application must match the fees quoted when they close. Anything related to getting a mortgage, any fee related to getting a mortgage, the loan estimate has got to match the closing disclosure. So what they're disclosed to when they apply for the loan must match the closing disclosure. Any bank fees related to getting a mortgage, they've got to match. The other layer of TRID is both of those disclosures, loan estimate and closing disclosure, each of those, they get a 3-day review period. So they've got 3 days to review and accept it when they apply. And then before they can close, that closing disclosure must be made 3 days prior. So if you're going to have a closing on Friday, that disclosure's got to go out on Tuesday. If it doesn't, you can't close on Friday. Now, of the 8 test questions, you've got a lot of options here. You've got a lot of options. And I would make sure, just as a highlight, I would make sure that you know the mortgage terminology around acceleration clause, alienation clause. I would know the definition of a discount point. I would know the definition of a foreclosure as it relates to an REO property or that redemption clause. I would know a loan origination fee. And I would know the definition of a short sale. That right there was probably 8. So there's more options coming. I would know loan types of conventional with the PMI, FHA, who's a good candidate for that, low to moderate income. And I would know veterans with that CRV as their version of an appraisal. I would know the definition negative or reverse amortization. And then I would know an example of a partially amortized loan would be a balloon loan. That one would be a good candidate as well. And then I think you're going to have probably 2 test questions of the 8 just on that finance system. So I would know that Fannie Mae is the major player in the secondary mortgage market. I would associate Regulation Z to advertising and those triggering terms. And I would know TRID requires disclosure of fees that match front to end, loan disclosure to closing disclosure. And each of those documents get 3 days each. Now, I know I gave you more than 8 examples there, but that's where I think you need to hone in. In my experience, that's what I would have you do.